Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the third inaugural episode of Backlog Banter. I'm Tucker Hazel, joined by my big, beautiful co-host, Abram Biener, and today we are here to talk about the games that we've been playing in the last whatever amount of weeks it's been since last time BLB was around. We had a couple monkey wrenches thrown into our gears. Abram got deathly sick.
Yes.
Some sort of fucking viral disease, and it just knocked us off whack for like a week. But in that time, we have gained an inordinate amount of subscribers.
We stopped posting videos, gained about 150 subscribers. I was brought to the brink of my own mortality, and then we just, for 2 other weeks, also didn't record BLB. I don't know what happened, but we're back now.
Yes, we are. But next week, I'm going to be in Vegas, so we're not going to be able to do an episode next week. But we're doing this here. Try our fucking damnedest to get back on a normal schedule, but it's BLB. You don't really expect consistency out of us.
Indubitably.
But there's a few new things this week, being the last time we discussed this, or after the last episode of BLB, we came up with the idea of having background music in our videos, and also someone from the community choosing which music goes behind each episode. So this week, it's either Sam or Andrew. I can't remember which one actually did it. I'll clarify that afterward and get what music they want to put in this episode. So you'll be hearing that as you're listening to this now. But at the end of this episode, the people who have submitted BLB submissions will be entered into a little drawing wheel for whoever's going to choose it for the next episode, whatever that ended up being.
This episode has been so long in the making that I legitimately thought that there were several episodes of background music at this point.
No, it's never happened.
Oh, well, interesting.
I think I've only edited one video with background music ever. Maybe, no, I think I might have done 2 since the BDSB check-in. Pulse check.
Tucker, let's stop beating around your bush and get right to the fucking heart of the matter with the game. Do you want to go first? Or you want me to?
I'd love for you to go first. I'm interested to hear what you've been diddling with.
Okay, let's not bury the lead.
Other than yourself.
Let's not bury the lead any further. Let's just talk about it. Let's talk about Halo Infinite.
Okay, all right. You get it out early. Rip off the Band-Aid.
Yes, this one's probably going to be prominently featured in the thumbnail and the title because this is the big boy. This is the new release. This is the one I really want to talk about. This is, Tucker, based off the multiplayer, my game of the year for 2021.
Exciting stuff.
I fucking love Halo Infinite's multiplayer. Now, here's the rub. As people who watch this show will know, and as I'm going to elaborate on and more Halo deeper into this episode, Halo has kind of become my comfort series, where Pokemon used to be it for me, but now it's Halo, where it's just, I love these games, I love this world, I love the way it feels to play these games and the lore and everything, so I return to them constantly. And I do that in the context of the single-player campaigns. I played through all of them this year, and I'm all the way back up to the 343 games in the sequence of a replay. Halo Infinite's multiplayer drops early. I mainly care about the campaign, but I also wanted to really get into multiplayer because that is really why Halo has maintained its relevancy. Yeah. It's not the single player as much as people love it, right? And playing this one, I'm not really going to comment about how it's changed as much as just my personal thoughts on it, because you can listen to people who are a lot more versed in the multiplayer for that. But the long and the short of it is, I played 12 hours of this game over 3 days. I invented hours in my day to play Halo Infinite by myself and with some friends here on campus. And I just think that the gunplay is so refined. The map design is so great. It feels so good. We've got 4v4 matches of CTF, Oddball, Slayer, Strongholds, traditional modes, and big team battle, which is the Halo stuff.
Yeah, everyone knows what those mean.
Sure, don't worry about it. You got your big team battle, which is your 12-on-12. With your tank, with your vehicles, it's combined arms, still CTF, still various modes, but I think there's plenty of content here, and of course, the game is in beta. The full release is still the 8th currently that we're in beta, even though your progress transfers over, your battle pass unlocks transfer over.
You're just playing the game at this point, out. But to clarify, because I'm not necessarily familiar with what this beta, quote unquote, means, is there more multiplayer content coming at full release? Oh, okay. So this is 2/3 of the content, maybe half?
I would say.
Do we know?
2/3. Well, we'll see. There's more modes being added. There's an overhaul to the battle pass coming. There's a lot of stuff in the works right now. Coming before the game launches. The term beta is kind of, I think, just being used to run cover here in case the servers ended up crashing or shit started going wrong. which it isn't, by the way. The game is super stable.
I haven't heard any. Honestly, I haven't heard anything negative about Halo Infinite yet.
Yeah, I mean, because I just think that it feels so fucking fantastic to play. And after 12 hours, I feel like now I'm starting to get a feel for the weapons sandbox. I'm starting to get a feel for the maps, the modes, carve out my strategies. I'm pretty good at this game. I am not good. Splatoon used to be the only shooter I was good at competitively, but here I'm running like a 2.0 KD about, which is not incredible. There's people who are much better than me, but I'm feeling really good. I'm fucking up people online.
You're killing more people than kill you.
Yes.
Which is the goal.
Which is the goal, right about 2 to 1.
Yeah, and when that's what I think we know what 2.0 KD means. But what I can't remember what it was, but I was playing. Oh, I think it was maybe Dota or something. When I don't know how to play Dota, and my friends were like trying to teach me, and I would be excited if I got a kill.
Yeah.
So when I'm getting into any new multiplayer game, getting that over that hump of I'm killing more people than are killing me, and I understand the game well enough to actually function as a member of my team and not hold everyone back. That's a very satisfying moment, and you've already reached that. So congratulations. And
it feels so
I'll
good
have to make it over that hump if I end up when I end up trying this game multiplayer.
It feels so good hitting a fucking triple kill or picking up the rocket launcher and kill. It just every facet of the sandbox just funnels you towards these amazing moments. Like,
question.
Yes.
What the fuck does sandbox mean here?
The weapons sandbox, the equipment sandbox, the vehicle sandbox. It refers to all these different gameplay, all these elements of the gameplay experience and the ways they interact.
So the weapons, the vehicle. Well, why apply sandbox to it? I've never heard that term before. Well, that's something within the game, or is it just a general term?
That's just general within the. Well, I suppose you could refer to a mechanical sandbox in kind of any game, but in the context of a first-person shooter, it's about the ways that these different systems are interacting. This sort of idea of you get the disruptor pistol, and the disruptor pistol takes out the warthog in X, Y, and Z. Think about like a weapons triangle and Fire Emblem type advantages in Pokemon. The weapons sandbox, the equipment sandbox, it's referring to ways all of these things are interacting with the player and in the environment.
Sure.
There are just so many options here, and there's so many new great additions. Like the grapple shot, you get the grapple shot.
That seems like the big thing for this game.
Well, it's actually not really. Because the thing about it is...
Well, the video clips that I've seen of this game being played, that does not... I have only seen like, holy shit, grapple hook off the thing, into the car, grab someone out, flip off the thing. And that seems like the biggest addition to your moveset.
Well, it's not really. And it's good that it isn't, because one of the biggest problems people had with Halo 5 is that it brought Halo out of the realm of the arena shooter and more into the realm of the twitchy esports, enhanced mobility, Spartan pound, dash, all of this shit. That is all stripped back, and systems like the grapple shot are now equipment on the battlefield. And for people who have played Halo 3, you'll know what I mean when you say that. Basically, you have to find the grapple shot on the battlefield, you pick it up, and it has a limited number of uses until you drop it.
Interesting.
So it is not part of your kit, and because of that, it becomes something to fight over. And when you get the grapple shot and you have like the Bulldog or the Hydra or something, and you grapple shot across the map and land on a guy, take him out with a shotgun, get the quick draw kill with your pistol, keep moving. There's just a flow to this game, which feels very much like the peak of Bungie's stuff, but still modern. And it's this really great convergence where I was worried that Halo Infinite wouldn't have its own identity because it was going to retread Bungie stuff too much. But it absolutely does. The flow to this game is just fucking fantastic. The last thing I want to say about this before we move on, because ultimately I'm going to be making some more stuff. I'm actually going to be streaming Halo Infinite. When this goes out, either the day of or the day later, because I'm going home. So I'll talk more about the game in depth there, because ultimately I don't want to bore Tucker with stuff that he's not familiar with until he actually plays the game. Then we can talk about it in more depth.
Yeah. But by the way, not that that's a problem. The almost weekly Abram bullshits about Halo for 20 minute segment it's nice period for me to rest my eyes, rest my soul, rest my brain, come back fully charged for when something interesting is going on.
Well, Tucker, the reason I want to kind of scoot through Halo Infinite a little bit is because we're talking about two other Halo games this week. But
fucking damn
it. This multiplayer gets me so excited for the single player, actually.
Sure.
The reason being is because I think on a mechanical level, this genuinely will be the best feeling Halo campaign. because you were just talking about the grapple shot being a big addition to movement. It isn't in multiplayer because it's equipment, but in the campaign it's a persistent upgrade. Once you have the grapple shot, you have the grapple shot. So when you combine how good just gunplay is, and you combine that with the new additions to the equipment systems and all these new weapons, there's going to be such a good gameplay experience there, because the new Covenant weapons are awesome. But when I'm playing multiplayer and I'm playing oddball and I need to back up my team, well, then I'm going to go for my assault rifle, my sidekick, and the battle rifle, because I know those. I'm good with those, right?
Sure.
But in the context of the campaign where I can experiment with all of these new tools, as long as 343 is able to deliver a good story and a good mission variety, this will be the best Halo campaign, period. Already, I'm very confident that on a mechanical level it will be. On a scale level, I think it will be. The big team battle maps are beautiful with these little critters running around the environment and everything. So I just think that the single player, taking what's so great about the multiplayer, it's going to be terrific. And then my experience there learning these weapons is going to be even more lethal in multiplayer. So all around, I really love the game. The one issue, as most people are saying, and I agree with completely, is the battle pass. It is just, the progression is just way too slow. I played 12 hours and I'm ranked 4 out of 100.
Sure.
And it's just because they don't give you per match experience. You only get experience for completing challenges, which I just do not think is a good system, especially because when you level up, you might get a new attachment for your helmet. And that's basically that.
And you're level 4. So
yeah. And I'm paying for the pass, right? It's $10. I felt more than comfortable doing that, considering I get the multiplayer for free. I wanted to throw it back.
Free.
Yeah. Through Game Pass. I wanted to throw
Halo
it back at them.
free, essentially, yeah.
Wanted to give them fucking $550 for that Xbox, but God forbid a fucking human opposed to a bot could buy one, but that's a conversation for a different time. But on the whole, I really genuinely love Halo Infinite. It is by far the most fun I've had with a new video game this year, bar none. Metroid Dread, I still love it, but the multiplayer is just so amazing. And as long as the single player is on this level of quality, it'll be Halo here and Metroid here. There'll be a significant gap. And I fucking love Metroid Dread. So
okay, wow. Edition 1 of fucking Halo Talk with Abram Beener is over for the next 15 minutes or so until we fucking get right back into it. But you've got to break, everyone. Take a breath. You've earned it, because we're going to talk about something much more exciting, which is, of course, Yoshi's Story, which I went back and played. I think it was even before we recorded the last episode, so I'm digging into my memory banks to try to
it was a long time
recall this game. But it's also more difficult to talk about this game because it's just not very good. I mean, this is I really don't understand this game. I beat the game, but it's really strange from a structure perspective and really poor from a gameplay perspective. It really only stands up as something interesting because it is a 2D game on the N64, which there aren't very many of. It's the only Yoshi game on N64. And those are the things that make it interesting. I think the art style is also phenomenal. I mean, it looks great. It has this nice sort of toy storybook aesthetic, which does look great. But the elements that people love so much about Yoshi's Island, being the gameplay and the structure and all of that sort of pulling together with the aesthetic, does not carry through here. And of course, I haven't played Yoshi's Island, and I'd love to eventually, but this is my second Yoshi platformer experience after Crafted World, which is one of my favorite games. I think the game's phenomenal. But Yoshi's Story. All right, here's the problem with Yoshi's Story. Is to beat the game, you only have to play 6 levels, I think. You get to a new world, and I don't think you can choose what level, but it's really not clear. It's hard to know where to start with this game, because you're dropped into a level and you can just keep going. I don't know when the levels end. It's unclear, because the only goal is to eat enough fruits to finish the level. And there's plenty of fruits. That's not a problem.
Sure.
And everything you interact with gives you fruits, and they're just like sitting around and stuff. But I think you get like 35, 40 fruits, whatever, and that's it. Your Yoshis are now happy. You've increased their happiness enough to finish the level, whatever the fuck that means. There's some dumb phrase that says every time you finish, like, the Yoshis are now happy and they can move on to the next thing. It's so fucking weird. So there's no like there's obviously no platforming challenge because you're not trying to get to the end of a level. And there's no real reason to interact with any specific level elements because if you don't, that's fine. You can go get fruit elsewhere. And it's not like the fruit is hard to get, so you can just find it in the environment by like walking around. And then when you finish the level, you move on to the next world because you only play one level per world.
Yeah.
But there are other levels. They're accessed in other ways. It's unclear. It doesn't really tell you how to do that. The game's also really poor at telling you what mechanics do what and how to link things together and how to access different levels, whatever. And then another weird thing is that you only have the amount of lives to beat the game that you have Yoshis, different colored Yoshis.
Okay.
And so when you lose a life, you lose that Yoshi. And you can find a thing in some levels that will bring one back to life. But it just makes this really strange series of elements that isn't properly explained to you. That makes it very, very different from what you expect out of a 2D platformer, out of a Yoshi game. But I found it to make the experience significantly worse, especially because as it doesn't teach you how to play the game and interact with these elements, which could be interesting, but because they're not explained, it's more confusing. That was also on top of just really slippery controls, and the environment's not very fun to interact with. I think this is actually a very, very poor game. And I sincerely do not recommend it.
Well, luckily I don't have much intention on playing Yoshi's Story, so
yeah,
you didn't have to avert me from any crisis, but maybe, I don't know, fucking Andrew, maybe he was thinking about it and he'll watch this and be deterred from it. I don't know, just pull a random person out of my ass, but I think you should play Yoshi's Island. That's really my only takeaway from this story here, because I think that game is terrific. I mean, Yoshi's Story is a classic for a reason, and the fact that it was followed up by Yoshi's Story is awfully peculiar. It never did anything for me. The only thing that makes me interested is its short length, if I can just knock it out. But ultimately, my time is valuable, and I think it's probably more valuable than Yoshi's Story.
I can't even remember. It was probably 3 or 4 hours that took me to finish it.
Yeah.
Or let's see. Hold on. I mean, I have my time stamps.
By the way.
Oh, maybe it wasn't even that. Holy shit. Okay, hold on. It
I
may
think
have actually
how long
only
to beat is like 2 hours or 2.5 hours.
Yeah, it may have actually only been like 90 minutes or 80 minutes, which is just a testament to how little fun I was having playing this game, that it felt like a slog, even though I only played 6 levels.
Yes. I don't know.
I'll play Yoshi's Story. Come on, guys.
I'll do my best not to.
The reason I was interacting with it is because it was the only game left on N64 Online that I've never touched.
Yeah.
So I'm just interested to try it. And because it was short, I was like, I'll just beat this and I'll have played Yoshi's Story, and I can parade around campus with I played Yoshi's Story on a flag, and everyone will fucking applaud me. Everyone was there.
Badge.
Obama clapped.
Obama clapped. Of course, Obama would clap for Yoshi's Story.
Yeah, he would.
But no, I mean, the only thing I want to say is, where are those other N64 games, huh?
Yeah.
But that is conversation for another time.
I'm glad the game is there from a history perspective, being able to access it and being able to play it at all. Because I would not pay $5 for this game on the fucking Wii U. It's more than that, isn't it? It's probably
$10 probably.
10, 12, yeah. Not worth that money. But it's on there. If you're a dumb fucking game history completionist like I am, go play it. But I don't expect much out of it. From a first party Nintendo game, follow up to one of the greatest games of all time. Don't expect much out of it.
I would like to play Yoshi's Safari, speaking of first person Yoshi games.
I tried to emulate Yoshi's Safari at one point, and I mean, you really can't.
Yeah, like why even emulate it?
Super scope?
You gotta have the super scope.
No, I was going to use the mouse.
That's so fucking lame. You gotta have a super scope. But I've never even held a super scope. This is totally besides the point. Tucker, what do I want to talk to you about next?
Halo?
No.
I want
to talk to you about a terrible game. I want to talk to you about Grand Theft Auto San Andreas Definitive Edition.
Yeah. Okay. All right. It's been a while since that game came out, but we're finally here to give Abram's thoughts on it because I didn't play the fucking thing.
Yeah. So, if you're a hardcore Abram Buhner fan, as I know most of you are, you probably will have already read my piece on Retroware.
Which that went up?
Yes. Which is titled the GTA Trilogy disrespects its own legacy, or something to that, or I might not use the word disrespect, but the point is, this is an This is a categorically embarrassing release.
That's
It's
what,
not even.
yeah, that's what it seems like.
It's not even. Here's the thing: it's very funny. If you go on Twitter and you just look at the shit that's transpired, what has been found in these games, it is very funny. But it is not funny at all the ways that Rockstar and Grove Street Games, who actually did the remake, remaster, it's very unclear how the game ended up in the way it is. It's a fucking disaster visually. Mechanically, they updated the mechanics in the most circuitous sense just to put it on the back of the box.
Mm-hmm.
But the fundamental things that needed work, AI, checkpointing, things like that, completely untouched. And to make matters worse, Rockstar delisted the original games. This is a categorical loss on every front.
Yes.
The games themselves are in worse state than they arguably were before.
Mm-hmm.
From a preservationist angle, Rockstar completely fucked over themselves and the community, and they just made it super clear that they wanted your money.
Yeah.
And that probably because the next gen version of GTA had to be pushed to the next spring, they wanted something this holiday.
Oh,
and
true.
so
Yeah.
they spat out these games, which I played San Andreas on Game Pass on Series S. I have heard that the game is in a disgusting place on Switch.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I can't even imagine.
It really, it's what it is really just a shame that it's not even worth discussing. It's just, it really sucks. But if you want more in depth on that, in the piece, I would recommend you go read it, because what I actually want to talk about a little bit, Tucker, is San Andreas itself.
Okay.
Because I didn't really touch on that before.
Yes, the reason I didn't know that it released is because you didn't actually tweet about it.
Yeah, I forgot to.
You didn't promote that one.
It's been a very busy week. I'll retweet it after this recording. But
I'm putting the blame on you.
The thing about it is, Tucker, as I never played GTA before.
No.
I did not grow up in a household where if I had asked for GTA, I would have gotten it.
Mm-hmm.
But also, it was just never really on my radar.
Yeah.
Even when my friends were playing a lot of GTA 5, it wasn't something that particularly interested me. But I figured, these games are the ones that put GTA on the map, really. So,
yeah.
Best versions of these cleaned up, San Andreas on Game Pass. Let's go for it. And I think this game is very interesting. If in the context of a 6th generation open world, it is very impressive. The mission variety is really great. The third-person shooting is wonky, but for the time, it's what you'd expect. It's sort of third-person lock-on.
Sure, yeah.
Driving feels good. Like, the game San Andreas is quite ambitious, I think, and quite fun to experience. And I kind of want to play San Andreas, the original now, right? Yeah. Because the game under here is really unique. And what I love the most, actually, is the narrative. I think the narrative is very strong. I think the ways that it weaves...
For San Andreas.
Yeah. The ways that it weaves together its characters into its satire, into its plot. I mean, it's very clear to me now why people love GTA.
Sure.
But this was just not the package to experience it in. And I just... Because I did want to actually play all 3, but now I simply refuse to buy the other ones.
Of course,
they're just
with
not
the
getting my money
definitive, the fucking worst name, by the way, for this collection.
It is
Trilogy, the definitive edition.
It is Grand Theft Auto : the Trilogy the definitive edition.
Yes,
which is insane.
Yeah. The interesting thing about all this is I'm in pretty much the same boat. I was not a GTA person growing up. I actually don't really feel like most of my friends were either. I didn't hear. I honestly, and this just shows my disconnect from the franchise, didn't know people even gave a shit about GTA 4. Like 6 months ago, I was talking to Joe and Tanner. I'm like, do people care about GTA 4? Like, I don't hear them talk about that. Because, of course, I hear everything about the PS2 ones. People love San Andreas, Vice City, GTA 3. There's these classic games that people older than me speak nostalgically about. And, of course, I know GTA 5 because that's the one that was in my wheelhouse, and especially in high school. But GTA 4, I honestly never heard anyone talk about it. But that game sold very well. Of course, very popular, very, influential for the time, whatever. But when I saw these, I was interested to try those games which are not so based in online multiplayer, which aren't so based in the stuff that GTA 5, which I played and had a decent enough time with, was focused on, and to have them on the go because I wanted to play on my Switch. Like, this is really the only opportunity I'm going to have to get into these games. Yeah. And when that trailer dropped, I think the original trailer for this game is pretty awesome. I thought the art style looked great. I thought it was a good way to update those games visually, and it was showing good shots, and they were talking all these things like, oh, the gameplay's been updated. It's these games in their best possible form. I'm like, perfect. This is the best possible outcome of this. and then no one got codes, and then the game was removed from the store, and then all this shit and the visual glitches and the fucking rain thing you were talking about, all this shit just makes this one of the, I think, biggest failures of the industry. And it's interesting that they removed the old versions, because I think I still have access to them, because I think Tanner bought the Trilogy on PS4 a couple years ago.
If you
but
have
I remember
them, you still have them.
But here's the problem. I remember watching him play GTA San Andreas on PS4 in our dorm room, and it didn't run very well, and it was bad, and we're like, and it crashed a couple times. We're like, oh god, whatever. Hopefully they make a re-release of this.
It's just too bad. What these games needed was a remake, a proper from the ground up remake, because the problem with these games and the state that they're in is that there is so much PS2 code here.
Sure.
The bones of a PS2 game are here, but there's this gross PS5 skin stretched over them. And it leads to this place where like the visuals are improved, but they look significantly worse in my opinion.
Yeah.
There's such a disconnect between these like nicer character models, literally like fucking twisting their heads like owls or clipping through shit. Like the believability of a PS2 cutscene is completely gone here. Like if I'm watching a PS2 cutscene and someone's head turns around or they clip through something, I can roll with that because that is 2004 speaking.
That was the best they could do. Yeah.
That's a technical limitation. Here though, it's not, and it just comes off as really garish. I think this game is incredibly garish. And what really needed the work, the mechanics, the structure of the game, which is great, but just super dated, it's just untouched. It really, I think that this collection is a categorical failure.
Yeah. Oh, GTA. GTA 6 10 years from now, by the way.
Tucker, if only they had the resources to make something better.
Oh, God. All right. I'm going to head over to talk about something else, which is the small amount of time that I've spent playing 2 weeks ago to this day, Returnal. I played an hour and a half of it before I went to see Eternals, which is a fun little bit of name rhyming synergy there, which is not planned. But as we were driving to Eternals, I'm like, they rhyme, no fucking way. But yeah, so I finally got around to trying Returnal because I didn't really have anything else to play in that time. I finished Deathloop, I'd finished Guardians, and done whatever. I'm like, try Returnal. And I played the 90 minutes of it, and then I went and saw Eternals, and then I have not really played that much video games, period, since. But really no fault of Returnal, because I certainly enjoyed. I had a good first impression of what I played of the game. I do think the game is it's obviously very front-loaded with information. And to this point, I'm feeling very confused, and it's very daunting for me to feel like I can go back to it because so many mechanics, so many different terms for things, these items and the ways the upgrade systems work are probably clear once you get into it, but from a first blush perspective, and the ways that some things you can save, some things you put points into this and you get weapons if you defeat these guys, and there's the bodies on the ground that if you chase them you can get points there's multiple kinds of points, and there's a fucking house, and what am I actually going to try to do, and the objectives aren't really clear on the maps. The game is there, but I really was overwhelmed and confused by playing my first 90 minutes of the game.
And I think as you should be. I genuinely think that Returnal is probably the best game that released this year. Even though I've got a personal disconnect to it because I like my teeth here, not down my throat. I don't want my teeth kicked there, and for me, I was just getting too frustrated by the game. But I think what it is a masterclass in narrative told through mechanics, and I think that overwhelm is part of why Returnal is so compelling.
Yeah, naturally.
Because when you really get into it, the game is actually quite simple, and I really think that even if you just doubled your current playtime, you would have a complete understanding of how Returnal works. And then it becomes about how good that combat feels. It becomes about the immersion in the narrative. I think you would actually really love the sort of ways that lore becomes intertwined, knowing, the way, your preferences for world building and such. Returnal does this so interestingly. So I actually think that now, especially that you can save scum through like uploading cloud saves and downloading cloud saves.
I'm playing it.
Yeah, I actually genuinely think that if you put more time into it, you probably would really love it too. I would like to actually give it another shot. I might save scum to the end. I could consistently beat the first 4 or consistently get to the 4th biome, but I couldn't get any further than that.
How many are
And I
there?
just
6?
I think it's 6 biomes. And so for me, it was a miss, but I just really recognized how interesting this game is, particularly on a AAA scale, the ways that they're telling their story, the ways that they're combining this high fidelity presentation and next generation game feel, DualSense and everything with this very much mechanics driven storyline. And the fact that it was snubbed for Game of the Year is an absolute travesty, in my opinion, as we'll talk about when we get to a Game of the Year coverage.
Yeah, no, it's definitely very interesting. I think the reason I didn't feel the draw to go back to it is that Overwhelm I didn't find very compelling.
Sure.
And also what was being presented to me, I was seeing glimmers of interest in personally, but I really feel like this is probably obviously just the first biome, but this is the introductory area, and it was what I've only experienced, is just a lot of blacks and browns. I didn't really find the world very interesting. It's got this sort of disconnect between like just doors being in the environment because you have to reach a different room, and like natural environments with things that feel like I really was not very drawn in by the world, and especially the aesthetic, which was kind of just like, yeah, this looks very good and the things are very detailed, but it's kind of all just muck. Like it's all just dark and rainy and kind of nasty. So I was really turned off by that. And while I was enjoying Celine possibly as a character, you don't learn a ton about her at the beginning. Being placed into that world to start and learn the mechanics, and combined with the overwhelming, everything being thrown at me, I really did not get a great first impression out of this game. The more I think about it, I really don't know if I was enjoying myself, especially because I don't know. I didn't find the shooting and jumping and stuff. I was kind of hold my hands in weird ways to control the character. I was like, I don't know. It's just I feel like there's a really big hump that I have to get over to really enjoy this game.
I mean, I think you have to want to get over the hump. Yeah. And if you don't, I mean, ultimately, I think what is good about Returnal is what is good to me about the FromSoft games, which is they don't care about you.
Yeah.
And if you want to care about it, you can. And if you don't, well, then the game's not for you. And ultimately, I think that is a very interesting design philosophy. Because for me, I think Atropos is really beautiful, actually. It's inspirations from Prometheus and Ridley Scott's Aliens and that entire world. The fusion of the technological with the natural for me is very interesting, but ultimately that is just pure subjectivism. Of course, and I think that the fact that the game throws you in and kills you, and then the SSD kicks you right back to the beginning and you're right off the ship again, that sort of oppression is what compelled me into the game, but it's also what kicked me out at a certain point, right? And so I think this is a really...
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. It's just a game of contradictions and tensions. Yeah. And for that reason, I just think that it is fascinating, and its willingness to take risks at its $70 price scale and fidelity. This is a sort of game we do not get enough of. And in spite of me playing a lot of PlayStation 5 games that I thought were like, okay, this is technically great, I see it, I think that they all look uninspired in comparison to Returnal in terms of the risks it takes. Sure. So I'm just so impressed by the game, but I also totally understand why most people don't care. And I'll speak from somebody who fell off before I could see it through. So
yeah. Maybe I'll give it another try. I really do need to do it soon, though, because I feel like there's a gameplay learning curve that I was just getting into, and then because I stopped, it's very daunting for me to want to go back to that and have to essentially relearn everything that I was already learning, because there's so many fucking terms for all this goddamn stuff and so many mechanics that are just like, whoa, I'm like, okay, all right. But
they really aren't once you get into it. I think that is part of it. It definitely is that hump as you're talking about.
Sure. Because
once you understand how to do a run, once you start leveling up that gear, a lot of these subsystems just become that, and it becomes about a very simple gameplay loop.
Sure. No,
I just think it is a beautiful example of design. So let's talk about another
for Returnal. You can talk about fucking Halo now.
No, I'm gonna save it.
God damn.
I'm gonna keep saving it.
I just want to rip the fucking Band-Aid off. Cough, 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 cough.
Thank you for narrating.
I want to translate.
Let's talk about another beautiful example of design and another
Yoshi
horribly snubbed game, and that's Forza Horizon 5, which is an amazing game
that you and I can both talk about that because we both played it recently.
So Forza Horizon 5 for me is just a victim of the fact that my semester got very busy, and then Microsoft dropped Halo early.
Yeah.
The only reason I have not played more Forza Horizon is because of those factors. It has nothing to do with the game itself, which I think is immaculate, really. I think that Forza Horizon 5, for me, being probably the first racing game I've really given a hoot about beyond Mario Kart, is this amazing fusion of arcade racing elements in an open world RPG. Yeah. And that intersection, I just think, is not only beautiful, but mechanically fascinating. And I think that there's a very good reason why it is the highest reviewed exclusive of the entire year.
Highest rated game. Am I wrong about that?
Period?
Yeah,
I don't know about that. I could be wrong. I just
That's
know
what
that
I've heard.
Exclusive was the buzzword being bandied about, but it could be game of the year, which would also be deserved. So
I'm just trying to think. I mean, it's certainly possible that Deathloop is above it, but that's really all I can think of in terms.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised when like the Mass Effect trilogy had scored.
Oh, wait, hold on. Deathloop's exclusive too.
Yeah, no, it outscored Deathloop for sure.
Yeah. No, yeah. So I tried this game. I actually, little inside baseball, got Xbox Game Pass Ultimate to try this game through xCloud on my trusty MacBook Pro, which I'm now recording on. And everything that I have to say of this game is coming from 3 different angles. There is the game, there is my experience with racing games, my inexperience with racing games, and coming in at a fucking 170-degree angle, the fact that I played on xCloud, which is frankly the only reason I think I'm not loving this game. Well, other than my inexperience with racing games. Because I do think that you're right. Everything that I was able to experience here is obviously great. I think this is obviously from an objective quality standpoint of the amount of quality in the controls and the sound design and the large map and the visual fidelity and all that is immaculate. And I do think it deserves all the accolades that it's getting. As someone who's not into racing games, even I can recognize that.
Yeah.
But playing it on xCloud is really weird because it knocks it down to like sort of an early PS4 quality of visuals. And as someone who's not experienced with racing games, and frankly, and this is, I think, actually the biggest part of my disconnect with it, I don't really see the appeal or the variety. My brain is not tuned to how different cars drive and wanting to get first place and what even are the strategies, because the game doesn't really teach you any like strategies or anything of why you should be interested in getting better at racing other than getting first place and getting more points. I find the game fascinating, and I'm certainly enjoying it a lot more than I expected to as the first racing game I've played outside of Mario Kart, which I don't really like. And this is, I would probably say this is better than Mario Kart for me. But yeah, no, there's a lot of interesting thoughts that I have on this game, but I'm not going to play it anymore until I have an actual Xbox to get the visual fidelity out of, because I want this game to be huge and immersive and beautiful and sound great. But when I'm playing it on my laptop connected to my TV, it's even worse. And then when I have it on just my laptop, it looks a little bit better, but I'm playing it on a tiny screen and I want the big giant experience of Forza Horizon 5, not the fucking tiny one for my screen. So nothing is wrong with this game though. That's all I have to say.
I think for me, well, there is so much more than just racing in the tuning of different cars. And for me, that is why this game is compelling. Because, well, did you end up doing any of the expeditions? Did you get that far? You
mean like the sort of quasi-story missions?
Where you go out into the new environments and it's like mini open world areas and you're finding different things in the environment?
I mean, I explored the open world. I went around most of the map.
No, but they're very specific expeditions where you unlock like new challenge milestones. I think it's like new Horizon chapters or something.
Oh, no, yeah, I got a couple of those, yeah.
I just think that what this game does so well is it takes racing and moves racing beyond the context of just doing laps on a track.
Sure.
It's about vehicular exploration, which is not something that is traditionally thought of, right? You think about, you have vehicles in an open world game that is played on foot. But the character here is the car. And that is so interesting, the ways that you have to recontextualize looking for a barn for a new vehicle or getting XP points for hitting these breaking targets and things. It takes racing and makes it a mode of traversal in addition to a means of competition. And because of that, it just becomes so fun seeing the ways that they change that, whether you're doing off-road races for distance, or you're doing laps around a track, or you're literally exploring for new cars and things.
Yeah.
You're widening the map, going on these expeditions that are sometimes scripted, sometimes they open up into these areas with challenges. It just feels very dynamic in a way that I didn't expect. And because of that, I was just consistently surprised at how much fun I was having, because I felt like I was constantly being given a different way to drive, which is, I don't think, something I would get out of a motorsport game, which is why I don't really have much interest in
that being more sim, obviously.
Well, yeah, I just think that what they're able to pull out of the idea of driving is really, really, really impressive.
No, it's definitely the most interested I've ever been in a racing game. I do think that you're right. All of this variety and the way that you're unlocking new things, and there are the barns. There's not. I think there's only like 14 barns or something like that, like the hidden barns in the game. But then there's the boards that you're knocking over, and you discover new roads, and it's tracking all these little things. There's a lot of granularity to how much you've played the game, and how many races you've won, and how much time you spent doing this and that, and like it tracks everything. And I think that's awesome. I think that's all the amount of surprising fun that I was having with it. The surprising amount of fun with that I was having with it, because I was looking at this from outside. I'm like, it's an open world racing game. That's pretty interesting in its own right, but will I want to interact with all this stuff? And there is that draw there, and I was feeling myself just continually playing. It's like, oh, I'll just go over there and I'll try this, or it's one or two more little challenges, knock off this to get a whole new area unlocked. Okay, I'll finish that. Oh, and then it funnels you into a story mission where you are doing something to unlock that next area. Like, it puts it all in this really interesting context. Though I just don't know if this, and this is very subjective, and I think the reason I'm disconnecting with it is if there really is that much variety in the different kinds of races and the different kinds of challenges, is you are still just holding forward and sometimes letting up on the brake. And like, I just don't know from a gameplay perspective, there's actually enough variety there. You're placing your car in different contexts. You're doing some that are just straight, some that are the laps, some that are like, whatever. But I just don't think, as someone who's not a racing person and not into cars at all, not into the music aspect of it at all, not into the culture aspect of it at all, if there's enough gameplay variety from controlling your character, enough gameplay variety to give this the grab that I'm looking for.
I just think that you can get that reductive about literally any gameplay style. I mean, what is a platform other than just walking and jumping? Mm-hmm. What is a first-person shooter other than pointing at something and pulling the trigger? You know?
Of course.
I mean, ultimately, if you disconnect from racing, you disconnect from racing. But I think that that's nowhere near a fault of its own, because any genre can be reduced.
That's what I'm saying. Is there's nothing wrong with this game. This is the best racing game I've ever played. But when I'm going into this game and I'm excited to interact with it, and then I'm like, it feels like I've done this 40 fucking times already. That's like I reached that in the 6 or 7 hours I played with the game.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just think that then you factor in the RPG upgrade system and level ups and everything. It is such a dynamic and complex experience in a way that I didn't really expect. So, I mean, this might just be the fucking final stand of Tucker and racing games. If Forza Horizon 5 doesn't compel you, none of them are going to. And that's
here's
totally
the thing.
fun.
I'm interested to give it another try when I have that. Holy fuck! The quality and the graphics and the fucking particle effects are boring into my eyes and my soul.
Of course,
but I don't have an Xbox. I'm playing this through fucking xCloud, which isn't work. It worked. The experience works. I had no problem with controls. I had minimal problems with like lag and slowdown and some stuff, but not enough for me to like denounce the service. But for this next gen experience that is intended to be played on the best possible hardware, I don't think xCloud does it justice. And if you don't have an Xbox, I would not recommend playing this game on xCloud.
Oh, sure. I mean, also xCloud is just fucking amazing. I mean, the fact that this is an option to just play Forza on your phone.
Yes, of course.
It's really, I mean, this year really is just making me an awful Microsoft fanboy, but the games they're releasing, I think, are finally starting to really hit in not only a high quality way, but an incredibly diverse way. When you think about things like Psychonauts 2 being their game and that being up for Game of the Year, it just then you combine these services. Microsoft's just in a fantastic place right now.
Totally agree.
Tucker, I'm going to talk to you about Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic.
KOTOR time.
Yeah, it's KOTOR time. KOTOR is a game that I am reviewing for Ninty Fresh issue 6. So my full review is not going to be here for like 2.5 months. However, I'm playing the game now, and so you should watch out for that. You should also buy Ninty Fresh issue 5, which is available now. But KOTOR, as a humongous Star Wars fan, is probably the single piece of Star Wars media that has the biggest influence and fandom that I just didn't experience.
Yeah.
And so this is a major hole being plugged for me. And of course, I'm playing the Switch port, which I'll just say off the bat, I would consider it probably the best way to play. There's some weird stuff where like the text boxes are weirdly scaled sometimes, and Aspire actually asked about that. And they're like, this is intentional. Maybe it was intentional, but other than some kind of UI issues and maybe the loading times being a little bit choppy, just a little bit choppy, having this RPG, a game of this scale on Switch, I think is perfect. But I don't want to talk about the port because I don't really care. I want to talk about KOTOR itself.
The game.
I've played probably 4 or 5 hours so far, so I'm very early on.
Yeah, not that far. Especially in a game of this scale, which you know how long the average completionist runtime
there
is?
Seems to be some real myopia around this. It seems like you can finish it in anywhere from 20 to 60 hours.
Sure, okay.
Which is, I think, just a testament to how sprawling and complicated this game is, especially for an original Xbox title. I mean, the game for its time is just so impressive, and it's still impressive today. It's the narrative options that really are what are still compelling me now. The beautiful environments you're going through, the interesting characters you're meeting, the dialogue options, the depth of those systems, the narrative, the fact that they basically invented a new Star Wars era here. It just that is why I love this game already as a Star Wars fan. But mechanically, it's where things start to get a little bit dicey for me.
Sure.
And it comes down to the combat mainly, which I think is unintuitively explained and just inherently not really my style, because it is a traditional tabletop RPG style of combat. It's basically D&D combat. It's on dice rolls, it's on averages, it's on your fucking dexterity stat checks and all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And it's also largely an auto battle system where you can queue up various attacks, sort of like the arts in Xenoblade, but it's you take some D&D, you take some Xenoblade, you kind of shove it together, auto battle, positioning, but movement and combat don't really mesh. That is where the game, I think, is suffering the most for me, because I just don't necessarily feel like I have enough agency over these battles to really compel me.
Sure.
But I think already as I play more, I get more party members, I upgrade them more. I'm starting to see sort of the beauty of the combat system. But right now, that is the part of the game I have to push through the most. But on the whole, it's just so inventive, and it takes Star Wars to such an interesting place that I really am having a great time with the game so far.
Yeah, my question, hearing all of this, and your main problem, of course, being with the combat, is how much of the game is combat? Is that like the focus of the game, or?
I mean, no. It's an RPG that does a great job of balancing its narrative focus, its combat, its side quests, and everything.
Sure, okay.
But combat is certainly a core pillar of the design.
Naturally, yeah.
So you do a lot of combat. It makes me interested to see what Aspire is going to do with the remake, whether or not they're...
this isn't the remake. Oh.
No.
Oops.
No, the remake doesn't even have a release date. It's a PS5 exclusive.
That's right.
And it's probably,
because I just downloaded the KOTOR remake logo on my desktop, because I thought that's what this was.
I imagine that the remake won't be out until 2023 at the earliest. But I'll be curious to see if they do sort of like a Final Fantasy VII remake type of deal where they add more action elements into the combat. I would personally really love that.
I think that's got to be what it is, especially talking about this. What I can gather from you describing the gameplay system, it does sound pretty antiquated. I mean, I can't remember the last time outside of Xenoblade that we've gotten a gameplay system like that, where you are not really in control of the character, stuff like that. So I would imagine that they would want to modernize in that way.
I mean, Aspire also does. This is the KOTOR. They did the KOTOR port. They are familiar with KOTOR. They've ported it to many different platforms. Yeah. But taking KOTOR and putting it on PlayStation 5 is by far the biggest project they've ever done. So I almost expect that it kind of will be pretty one-to-one, although I hope that it is not. But we'll see. But we'll keep checking in on KOTOR. I'll keep talking about it. It'll probably take me a couple weeks to beat it, but I'm having a great time so far.
How you doing with Kingdom Hearts?
I'm not playing it.
No, of course not. No. That was a little joke on my end. one of those jokes that I'm known for. But that's actually the Forza Horizon 5 was actually the last game that I have to talk about. That
It's actually not the last game you have to talk about.
Oh, yeah, Guardians time?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I did end up finishing Guardians of the Galaxy since we last talked. This is a fascinating game to me for a lot of different reasons. A lot of different reasons also being contextualized the fact that of the conversation we're going to have around it. Because I think the last time I had talked about this game, I was like 6 hours in, maybe, out of the 14 or 15, maybe 16 hours that it took me to finish the game. And this is far and away one of my games of the year. I think it's fascinating that from the fucking ashes of Square Enix superhero games rises this game that, for the most part, seems to be connecting with a lot of people. And a lot of people are very surprised by it. I think what this game has on its side is the surprising element it's as good as it is. Whether or not that connects with you, there is a significant bump in quality over fucking Avengers. That is people like, oh, hold on. Oh, why aren't people talking about this more? And it's that conversation that I think makes this game so interesting, but also the fact that I thought this game was fantastic. It's not phenomenal, but for the first game in what's presumably a series from a studio who's never made a Marvel game before and a new version of these characters that don't often get new versions of these characters, this game is amazing. And I think it's certainly a game of the year contender.
I mean, I don't personally. Since we've talked about it last, when I had probably played 2.5 hours before, I've now played probably 8. I'd say I'm about halfway through the game. I'm not going to finish it. For me, I just think that there is, in my opinion, such a ocean of quality between the narrative and the characters and their interactions and the actual gameplay.
Sure.
And for me, for somebody who puts a lot of emphasis on gameplay, that's just irreconcilable for me. As I played more, I think that the combat, the puzzle solving, the traversal gets better, but it gets far more monotonous, and it starts to become very clear how shallow these systems are. A lot of the combat, while it is flashy, boils down to using whatever ability is currently charged at the moment. Whichever Guardian's cooldown is available is the one I use, not necessarily because it fits in the situation, but because it's going to basically do the same thing. There is some nuance there, but you can kind of bully your way through the situation, which is largely what you have to do because these enemies are just damage sponges. They are just damage sponges, a lot of them. And then a lot of the
by the way, this is not really a spoiler, but spoiler, there's a final boss of this game. Yeah. The final boss is the worst fucking example of that. I think the final boss of this game is fucking god awful.
Sure.
But personally for me, that boss fight has a different sort of mechanic to it that is not very clearly not indicative of the rest of the gameplay because it was a gameplay mechanic introduced in that battle, and it's that mechanic that makes that boss fight fucking awful. But I personally found that while I did find the gameplay, it sort of tapers up and then levels off, and I think with what you're saying, it feeling more monotonous. I do feel like there is a gameplay flow and pattern that you can get into that makes it engaging enough where I don't think it's a bad combat system by any stretch of the imagination. Though my biggest criticism with this game and why I don't think it's phenomenal is this game is really, really, really well paced from a story perspective, from discovering new areas perspective. But within those areas, I do feel like there's just too much time getting through a specific area. I do think that if each area was 2/3 of its length, this would be a perfectly paced game. What I do think this game does best is, I was saying, the pacing of introducing new characters and story twists and new mechanics at a drip pace. That I played like 9 hours of this game in one day. I did basically nothing but play this game on the day that I beat it, because I was just I need to know what happens next. Holy shit, I can't wait to get to this part of this character. I can't wait to see what's happening. Bam, 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 bam. And the story and the gameplay and everything meshing in a way that I was super compelled to just sit there for hours and hours and hours and get as much of this game as I could.
No, I totally get that, because the narrative and the characters are very strong. But the narrative and the characters are really strong in the movies, and they're really strong in the comics. When I come to a superhero game, I don't get that interactivity anywhere else. You know what I mean? I can find these amazing stories and different versions of the characters, different riffs in the mediums that they already dominate in. So why I love Miles Morales is because the experience of being Miles Morales is so great. Yeah. The reason that every Batman Arkham review opened with "this game makes you feel like Batman" is because that is the barometer, in my opinion, for success within this subgenre. And for me, I just never felt that playing Guardians, because I just do not think the gameplay is designed especially well. And because of that, I just can't bring myself to get to those story beats when I feel like I have to slog through the actual playing part to experience them.
Sure, yeah. But like a Halo 2 almost.
No. But I'm very glad you liked it as much as you did. It seems like opinion is certainly skewed more in the direction of you. I think that it's certainly a pleasant surprise. I'm glad that the game is selling very well. And if they refine this for a sequel, then I might really dig the sequel. But I just think that this, for me, is too much of a rough cut right now.
Sure. Yeah.
Tucker, you don't want to hear about any more Halo today, do you?
No, not particularly. I mean, I could go the rest of my life without hearing about Halo, and I'd be a fucking happy clam.
Here's what I'd like you to do. I'm going to talk about Halo. I would like you to prepare the audience comments, because we forgot to do this before the video started, before we started recording.
Well, I was just going to scroll through the chat.
So I figure you just scroll through the chat, maybe compile them, put them in a little document if you want, if it's easier to read, whatever obliges you the most. I'll just talk about Halo for just a moment. Because ultimately, it's been a pretty meaty episode already. But I replayed both Halo 3 and Halo Reach, and I loved both of them. I kind of love them for different reasons, actually, in a sort of sense. They're very much closely related. The evolution between the two is not very stark. I don't even think it's as big as the jump from Combat Evolved to Halo 2. I think Bungie was just so on top of their game with 3 that Reach was just basically a different flavor of that same success. And playing them back to back, I think, revealed a lot to me about why I like each game individually. I need to cough.
You can cough on camera. I don't think they'll be mad at you.
No, but it's gonna blow out the microphone. It's gonna be a whole mess. It's gonna be
for
unpleasant
like maybe
to the ear.
1.5 seconds.
But I care about Nisk's ears. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. I don't think she watches this.
But Halo 3 is immaculate. I think, in my opinion, it might be the best first-person shooter I've ever played. You talk about mission variety, you talk about all of these things, but I think what I want to talk about just for a second is the world it builds and how it intrigues me. This score from Martin O'Donnell, the ways that the character relationships are complicated, that's also amazing. It's this complex story where there's a lot of loss and grief within the characters and larger world, but there's just these notes of hope and triumph that come through sonically, that come through the narrative, but also come through the gameplay. These amazing set pieces that play with scope. Maybe you're in these tight corridors, but then all of a sudden, oh shit, I'm in a Hornet and I'm up in the sky, and there's this great sense of scale. That the game is just so confident and such a refinement of what came before. The level design is so tight, and it facilitates these moments of where you just feel like Chief is an absolute badass, because he is. It's fantastic. It is a power fantasy within a complicated science fiction storyline. Then you play Halo Reach. And Halo Reach is fantastic, and I think its story is good. My biggest problem with Halo Reach is that the character of Noble Six is just boring, and he's who you play as. He's basically a self-insert character where I don't think he should have been. I mean, Chief is a defined character. Noble Six really isn't. But the actual narrative, which is basically just Rogue One to A New Hope for Reach to Combat Evolved, is compelling. But what really does it for me is the environmental storytelling. The ways that the music is still as impressive as in 3, but it is somber. It contributes to this feeling that Reach is lost. You lost. It's over. The ways that Covenant pour at you, you are mowing down so many fucking Covenant.
Are you, genuine question, are you still recovering from the cough that you got 3 weeks ago? Jesus Christ. Yeah. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Have you been to a doctor?
Yeah, it's not COVID, it's not strep,
well, no, I know, but like
lingering.
You probably shouldn't have a cough at this point.
Everybody does. It's a whole problem on campus right now. But it's besides the point. I want to talk about Halo Reach. this just feeling of overwhelming force is communicated so well to the player, to the point where no matter how well you play, you know that it's over. It's just this oppression that is communicated so well, and it makes everything feel so melancholy. Every victory is ended usually in a defeat of some kind, a character death, a moment of absolute loss. It's this experience where they balance this just crushing defeat with these moments of individual success as you're completing these missions. And it's just such an interesting experience to contrast against the hope in Halo 3 in spite of its darkness. And I just think these games, you talk about them for being first-person shooters, landmarks there in terms of multiplayer, but these narratives, these worlds, the experiences of being in them are just so amazing. I just really think that Bungie, with these two games, just cemented themselves at the top of the genre forever. I don't think anyone's ever going to make anything as good as 3 and Reach in this space.
I want to play Halo 3. That might not be a bad game for me to play on xCloud, because I'm sure, I mean, obviously not as visually impressive as Forza Horizon 5.
Believe it or not.
So I might not have the same issue that I have, because really it's the visual fidelity being knocked down by the game being streamed. That was my problem with Forza. So yeah, maybe I should just start playing some other older games through xCloud.
Yeah, why not?
But I really do want to. I want to be a Halo fan. I want to have the passion that you have for the series, but Combat Evolved and 2 are just fucking mediocre games. They're just kind of boring. And I go into Halo 3 wondering what I'm missing and looking, hopefully, that 3 is the one that does me in. That sounds fucking dark. That grabs me in the way that I want it to. But coming off of 1 and 2 in the last year, worried that there's even the possibility. There is the possibility, and I'm at least interested to give 3 a try. But looking back on it, this is just an internal thing. I really should have been harder on Halo Combat Evolved and 2 in our reviews. I feel like I was just a little bitch about those games, and I regret it.
I just don't think you appreciate design the way I appreciate design.
I resent that.
But it's not to say that you have a different appreciation for game design than I do. The elements you appreciate might just not be in Halo. The ways you look at Guardians of the Galaxy and you appreciate that narrative design and that character design. And I'm hyper focusing on that game design. I think they're just different philosophies for how we enjoy these things.
Of course.
And ultimately, I think you might just be trying to push a square peg through a round hole. If you don't like Halo, you don't like Halo. I think that 3 might give you the best opportunity to understand why I love it, but ultimately it is still an experience driven by its sandbox.
Yeah.
And I think that sandbox has been great since Halo Combat Evolved, but if you don't care about the sandbox, you're just not going to care about Halo, and I don't necessarily think that's a problem. I just think it means that Bungie's making a sort of game that is not for your appreciation of how games are put together.
Of course, yeah.
Not an insult. I didn't mean for that to sound like an insult. But I think you took it as one, and that was certainly not the intention.
I definitely did.
Yes, but it wasn't.
Okay. So the reason that I don't think I was as ready to copy everything into a document is there are 3 comments today. That's not overwhelming to just read out of the fucking chat. And it's not like there's a ton of fluff in there either. So
fine.
Switching over to fucking community shit. I made a little graphic that's community submissions or something that I put in the last episode. That'll be up there. Maybe I'll change it to say fucking community shit. No, I'm not gonna do that. But I missed BLB submissions. Okay, the first comment comes from Tim, who has just recently rejoined the server and been very active, very appreciative of a new active member. But Tim says that he's been playing Wave 2 of the Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity DLC, which is called Guardian of Remembrance. I did not know that. No one is talking about this fucking DLC. He says it's a lot more substantial than the first wave. There are many story missions with new stages and full cutscenes, at least 9 so far. That's a solid amount. It is basically more of the same, so if you like the main game, as I did, you'll enjoy this. You could say that this game really didn't need more content, but I'm happy that it's there, as it's allowing me to revisit Hyrule again in advance of the sequel to Breath of the Wild. It kept me occupied on 2 4-hour flights, and it looks pretty stunning on the OLED screen.
I mean, I just don't like this game too much. I think Age of Calamity for me just missed why I loved Hyrule Warriors and Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition. But I am glad that they're adding a lot more of this DLC pack. It seems like they're actually doing something substantial and interesting here. But it's just not content I'm particularly enthused to engage with, I don't think.
Yeah, and as far as I can tell, that seems to be the general sentiment about this DLC. As the game came out, it was, what it was, and it connected to as much people as it needed to. But I really have not heard a ton about this DLC. I'm glad at least someone is playing it and can mention that it's of a quality to where the people who enjoyed the base game can enjoy this as well. It doesn't seem like this is a dip in quality, which is good. But yeah, I don't know what was added in this. I don't like the only thing that I really even cared about from the first one or from the base game was which characters are playable, how does this recontextualize the Breath of the Wild world story, all of that. And hearing no one talk about this doesn't make me feel like this is particularly substantial to any of that. So I don't really have a reason to care, especially because it's DLC, and that is inherently bad. You can quote me on that.
I still think you should try one of the games.
Yes, I want to, though I've heard a number of times from you that the one to go to would be Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition, the original Hyrule Warriors game, and not Age of Calamity. Which
True. Yes. However, for your tastes, you might like Age of Calamity's narrative focus more.
Possibly.
And you can get that for free $99. Opposed to tracking down a copy of.
Did you say free 99?
Yeah.
Okay, I was like, I heard 3, but I'm like I'm sure he said free.
Yeah. But
next up,
Bobby is here with a really great submission who says, I played Vader Immortal this week as Abram requested, and I'm glad he did. The story is captivating and uses the technology of the Oculus Quest really well. It made me feel like I was an actual Jedi, and the final fight was very good. There's so much detail in each episode, and the bonus of the dojo as side content is great. The Force is kind of hard to use sometimes, but everything else was great. It's a game that I've always wanted to exist since childhood, and now that I've played it, I can truly say it's one of the coolest gaming experiences I've ever had.
Was that a little bit of editorializing?
It was a little bit of me saying the wrong word and then having to finish the sentence, so I just finished it as I did.
But it says, I can truly say it's one of my coolest gaming experiences. But I mean, you got the same energy across. I appreciate it.
Yes.
But, yeah, no, I would love to be into VR. I just don't think there's enough of these kind of experiences, which I know what Vader Immortal is, and I would like to experience it eventually, and I'm sure I would very much enjoy it. But I don't know if there's enough of these kind of experiences to draw me to purchase an entirely other console for a lot of money and get my hands on the games and stuff as well. But God, I do want to play that game in my lifetime.
I mean, Vader Immortal is fantastic. I mean, I dedicated a lot of time to it on the Abram Biener VR Palooza or whatever the fuck that was called.
Extravaganza, I believe.
Extravaganza. I'm right there with you, though. I just think that VR's problem is its inaccessibility. The Oculus Quest, I think, actually is probably your best bet. And those, I don't think are that expensive. They're like $300, which is a lot more.
Is that how much the Quest 2 is?
I could be wrong about that, but I think they're in the ballpark of $300-$400,
sure.
Which is a lot more affordable considering that is a standalone headset than having to get a console and a PSVR or a bulky PC and a premium VR.
Well, I have a bulky PC. I don't have a good PC.
Sure.
Bulk does not relate to quality in the PC.
That's a good point. The Oculus Quest is actually getting a lot of the most interesting VR games. Vader Immortal, Resident Evil 4 VR, which people are really loving. That's kind of the place to be, and I almost want to get one of those. I think when we know what the PSVR 2 is, I think I'm really going to have to think about whether or not I want that or I want an Oculus Quest, because PSVR, as I talked about before, was fun, but it's just so limited.
Sure. Yeah. PSVR 2 is interesting to me because it is happening. There's not a ton of information on what that actually means in terms of obviously when it's releasing or how much it's going to be supported, because one of the things I would draw myself to the Quest for is it having the lion's share of the same games as PlayStation headset. What PSVR? I got it. Just left my mind. It's not a very complicated name. It's very self-explanatory. But I would want PSVR if there was a ton of great first-party exclusives on it, and there are a handful, but I don't know if it's enough. But it could be enough if PSVR 2 is properly supported. that's obviously we don't know yet. And that's also a sort of wait and see thing, because unless there's a great first party lineup at the launch of PSVR 2, maybe I wait 3 years and then, finally, PSVR 2 is ready for me to grab into.
You also don't have a PS5, which is part of the problem.
You really make some great points. Okay, Will, with his beautiful new Pepe tomato profile picture, which always makes me slightly uncomfortable, says that he's been playing Shin Megami Tensei 5. He says, other than a bit of Nocturne and 1, I haven't really played much SMT. Now, I would say that that's just about as much SMT as everyone else has played, so I think you're fine in that department. But this new one seems very promising. The only issue that is that I'm playing it on the hard mode, which is really Omega ball crushing difficulty. He's gonna try to get out of it in this difficulty. Out of what? Out of the game? Finish it? He says, but holy shit, this game is rough. Story seems very interesting though, and I'm interested to see where it goes. So I stumbled through that, but the idea I think got across is he's playing Shin Megami Tensei 5. It's a good game, but the hard mode is too hard.
Well, Omega ball crushing is not inherently a bad thing.
Great point. It's a great point.
My roommate is actually playing SMT 1 right now, which is very interesting. But that's a complete non sequitur. I don't really have much interest in this.
I know so fucking little about Shin Megami Tensei. What console was SMT 1 for
Super
initially?
Famicom.
Okay. Where's he playing it?
You
know what to say?
Through disreputable means.
Okay, all right. That's what I was wondering, because I didn't.
Yes.
I thought that it was on Modern Hardware. I'm like, is that game available? Because I don't even know what the first game looks like. I couldn't tell you what kind of gameplay it has.
It's a first person dungeon crawler with like an overworld map.
Oh, the Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
That's fucking wild.
It's very interesting, actually. I was watching him play a little bit of it yesterday. But SMT5 seems to be doing very well. But Tucker, I mean, we got another JRPG we hadn't playing this on Switch. You know what I'm saying?
God, sorry to cut off the SMT5 talk. Will, I don't really care. But I called to see if I could get my copy of Shining Pearl from GameStop tonight, because I remember back in the fucking good old days before COVID, I was at the midnight launch, but it was really like 10:30 or 11 or whatever of Sword and Shield, and that was great. And I was like, it's a Pokemon game. Of course I'm gonna be able to go get it tonight. But I don't think they give enough of a shit to have the store open late for fucking BDSP. So I have to wait until 11 a.m. tomorrow to pick it up.
I'll be playing it tonight.
We should do a little bit of a discussion after this to plan how we're going to cover that game.
Yeah. Let's actually do it right here. New segment on BLB, playing other channel content.
The reason I ask is because I'm leaving on Wednesday for Vegas, which means that I can play the game. Obviously, it's fucking Nintendo Switch. Take that shit with you. But I don't know if I'll be able to record. How fucking long does it take? We're experienced Pokemon players. We've played through Sinnoh before. Let's fucking put our bets right now. How long do you think it's gonna take us to beat these fucking games?
6 weeks.
Well, hold on. Let me recontextualize. That's your bet on how long you're gonna take to beat the game, because it seems to be about how much you stretch out fucking games.
No, actually, I'm reviewing it for RetroWare, so I'll clonk it out this weekend probably into next week. I'm going home, so like,
true.
You know,
and also it's Thanksgiving break.
Yeah,
which is exciting. Perfect timing, I guess, for a Pokemon game that I will probably ultimately say is underwhelming, but okay.
I'm actually getting a little bit more excited now that it's on my system.
Because you can see it there and you're like,
yeah, I've actually been licking my Switch profusely.
I get that Gen 4 taste. Warm it up, aerate it. Cover all of them, taste buds. Thank you very much for watching this episode of Backlog Banter. We will see you guys in the indiscriminate future for another installment, but I hope you enjoyed the addition of music. I hope you enjoyed the addition of that segment where we plan other content in here. And I'm going to more set a actual system for choosing who chooses the music and everything for the next time we do this, because I should have thought that beforehand. I had enough time to, I just fucking forgot. But there will be music here, and it will be from some game of the person who chose it choosing. Bye bye.